Hey everyone, it's Keely here for Soy and Shea, and thank you so much for joining me for today's video where we're going to take another look at the xTool M1 laser and blade cutting machine. Now, in my last video that I did where I did the unboxing and my initial impressions of the machine, I did mention at the beginning that I'd already been doing a fair bit of research into laser machines because one of my requirements out of having one of these was that I wanted to be able to etch on cylindrical items or items that were not flat, which means that the machine has to have the capability of having a rotary attachment tool, and this allows you to actually do cylindrical items. Now luckily for me, xTool did send me the rotary attachment to go with this machine, so today we're going to go and get this one unboxed and I'm going to show you how we use it on the xTool M1. Let's go. Alright, so as you can see, we've got several boxes here which make up the rotary component. This big box is the main part of our rotary, which has the arms on it which will allow us to sit items like this on and allow it to roll while it is etching. Now we also have a accessories kit and we also have a risers kit as well. So the key to getting a really good even etch is to make sure that you have a nice level surface. When it comes to doing the engraving, as your laser is moving over the top, if your surface is nice and level, that laser depth is always going to be the same and it's going to give you a nice consistent etch the whole way along. If your surface is all different heights, there's going to be points where the laser is probably weaker and then higher and then weaker depending upon how far it's traveling down. So you want to make sure that you've got a nice even flat surface to make sure that you get a nice even etch. When it comes to doing your cylindrical items on your main rotary attachment, having something like this tumbler is perfect because it's got a nice even edge, and as you sit it on the wheels, which I'll show you later, it is going to turn nice and evenly and it's going to be able to etch at the same depth and strength the whole way over this and etch it perfectly. But there are occasions when we have tumblers like this which are not even, so you can see that this end is higher than this end. So if I was to put this onto my rotary tool as it is, not only will it actually not turn evenly, so it will actually distort the pattern, you'll end up with parts of the pattern probably down here which are going to be a much more higher density etch than it is down this end. So in our accessories kit there are tools in there which will help you to actually level this out, and it will help it to actually turn and keep it nice and level as it goes through the machine. There are also other things in there like clamps, so that when you end up with, say, a jar like this which has a little foot on the end, the clamps will actually hold on to the end of the jar and it will rotate it. And there's also things in there so you can do things like etching on glass balls. It will actually hold a ball and rotate it. So the accessories kit's got lots of things in there to enable you to actually etch on all sorts of different surfaces. Now usually I like to jump in at the deep end, but I think for today we will jump in at the shallow end for a change, and I'm going to start off by etching this gorgeous tumbler which I got in a mystery box from Imagine Vinyl, and I saw this in my mystery box and I just thought sunflowers. So I've actually made up a quote that I'm going to put onto the front of here. I used Canva, which I'll show you in another video how I do it, but we're going to put it onto here. So let's get our rotary attachment unboxed, get it put together, and then I'm going to show you what we do with this final box, the risers, so that we can actually use our rotary tool in the M1. So as with everything else that I've experienced with xTool, everything is so well packaged. We've got a very comprehensive instruction book here that covers not only what's in this box but our accessories as well, and it's actually written in quite a number of languages too, and everything is always well packaged with this nice heavy foam. So let's get the bottom of this out. Alright, so in here we've got our cable so that we can attach our rotary tool onto our machine. We also have a couple of specialised screwdrivers because there's a few little nuts and bolts in here that do need to be adjusted to get the right widths on our rotary tool, which is all explained in the book, and I'll show what I'm going to do with some of it. So here is the main part of our rotary tool. This is the part that plugs into the machine, and the machine tells it how to rotate whatever we are etching on. We also have this extra little modular piece here for several reasons. One is to just give you a little bit of an extension, so if you are doing something like a large rolling pin and you want it to be nice and level, or say for example that our cup here was a lot longer, we can actually support the end of our cup using this little device here, and turning the end of it raises and lowers this bar here, which also helps us to make sure that our surface area is nice and level. We also have a few extra little pieces. We've got some extra tools and screws in here, some more screws, and these will all be to help put the extra parts onto our rotary piece. And there's also this super cute little spirit level as well, which will help us make sure that our whatever we are etching is nice and level on our rollers. Alright, so my aim is to try and keep my first project nice and simple and easy. So I'm just going to use the first part of this kit that we have unboxed. Now what we do need to do is actually adjust our machine. If I was to put this straight into the machine, so if I was to put this directly into the machine as is, like so, if I very gently actually pull the carriage forward, I only ever do stuff like this when the machine is off, and if we just gently push our carriage across, you can see, hopefully, that that's just not going to work. So what we need to do is a little bit of a modification on the machine, which is what xTool tell you to do, so that we can actually raise our machine up and pop in our engraver underneath the machine, and then it will have enough room to be able to move over it. And that is where this box of risers comes into it. And they are basically just some wooden blocks like so that have little holes in them, and the feet that are underneath our machine will sit snugly in these little holes, holding the machine up nice and high, so our laser can move over and there's no risk of it actually dropping out. So let me show you how we're going to do this. Okay, so I know this next bit's going to be a little bit hard for you guys to see. It is a little bit dull and overcast outside. It's been raining all day, so that's not helping things. Plus, I'm not turning the machine on for two reasons. One, so we don't have the noise on the camera, and two, you want to have the machine off while you are doing anything inside of this machine. What we want to do is take this base plate out, and there are actually 5 screws all around the edges of this machine, and it just uses a standard Phillips head screwdriver. So I'm going to go ahead and take the screws out and remove this base plate. Thought I was going to run into a problem then. The screw in the left hand side of the front here, it was in so tight, but when I actually shone the torch on it to have a look, when it's been put in, I can actually see, you're not going to be able to see it on the camera, I highly doubt it because these screws are so tiny. I could see that the top of it's kind of been chewed up, and so my screwdriver was just jumping out of it, wasn't undoing it, so I've had to go and get the drill with a specialised bit on it to help grab the screw, and I've been able to get it out, and I can see it's completely not going to be able to be used again, but luckily I have got spares in there and we managed to get the plate out. And to be honest, you probably don't need all 5 screws in there anyway. Now they are tiny screws, so I've put them into a very safe dish so I know exactly where they are. So we're going to put that where we know it, and what we're going to do now is just take this plate out the bottom of the machine. So I'm just going to pop my finger in there because it's going to be easiest. You can see I can now just pick that up, being careful not to knock the carriage on that side. And we've now got the plate out. Okay, so now that we've got the base plate out of our machine, we need to get this raised up, but we have to raise it to the right height. We need to be able to get our rotary attachment tool underneath with whatever it is that we're going to engrave on, and have enough space that the carriage can pass over it. Not too high so it doesn't engrave properly, and not too low so it doesn't hit the surface. And to do that, we use the different sides of our risers, and you can see we've got 3 that have got our holes on them. We've got alpha, beta and gamma. Now to work out which ones we're going to use, in the accessories box there is this handy dandy tape measure, and I'm super impressed because when I was watching the videos I thought this was paper and I was going to have to photocopy it and whatnot. It is actually a plastic, so this is going to be nice and long lasting. And what we're going to do is wrap this around the project that we're going to engrave, and it is going to tell us how high we need to raise our machine. So let me get my tumbler. Alright, so I have got my tumbler here, and what I'm going to do is take my measure. I'm going to just start to wrap it around, and we're going to thread this end through the hole, and then we're going to pull it round tight for about where you actually want the image. So I want my image to be in about the middle here, so I'm going to pull my tape around there. Okay, so I have got my tape measure around here, and it's going to actually tell us 2 things. The first thing I want to know is how high I need to raise the machine, and that's what these first 2 lines tell you. One is based upon using the rollers, and the other is based upon using the chuck, which is one of the accessories. I'm going to be using the roller, so what I'm going to do is look at the arrow and see where it corresponds along here, and I can see that it's on the red, which is the gamma. So what we need to do is, when we use our risers, we're going to be putting them in this way so that our feet sit in the gamma hole here. Now the other line we're looking at is our bottom one, because we're using our rollers. What we do with our rollers here, we can actually set the width of them. So depending upon what we are doing, we may need to actually move one of these rollers up. And I can see on my measure here, it is telling me, if we come back, it is only just on there, but it is on the green, which is telling me that I actually need to set this roller here into the B slot. So we're going to do that. First of all, we'll get the machine raised, and then we'll move this so we can sit our cup on and make sure that it rotates nicely. Now we've got the machine raised, it is time to get this roller in the right place. I've also just realised it's actually in the C position here, and halfway between C and B here, which is probably why when I've been having to play, my cups aren't sitting straight. But let's get this done. I have got the smaller of the screwdrivers. I'm just going to undo this screw in the bottom here, and then we should be able to move our little arm plate in, or our little arm into place. So just flip that back over. Oop, that comes out. That's sitting in B now. Put that back in, like so. Flip it over and we'll screw it back on, and it's as simple as that. Alright, so now that I've got that done, let's grab our cup and we're going to pop that on there. So you can see this is going to turn nicely on our rollers. But what we will do is just grab our little spirit level here. I'm going to pop it on the top. Now that cup looks like it should be nice and even, but it's actually not. So we will also have to use our little leveler here. So I'm just going to pop that towards the end of my rotary here. I'm going to move my cup over it, and I'm just going to very gently lift it up until it becomes nice and level, so we get a nice even etch. That is looking perfect. So let's get this into the machine. Alright, so what I've done with my machine, I have actually just put that metal base plate onto my work surface just to help protect it a little bit. So when we look down in the machine, you can still see that metal plate there. And what I'm now going to do is grab that rotary attachment there. Just make sure we're in the right slot. And you want to make sure that this is parallel to the machine. Now, one of the things I have done to help make sure that this is nice and parallel is, you can see I've got both of these front blocks pointing in the same direction, and then I've lined my mat up so that it is nice and straight along the bottom here. So that means I can actually use the lines on the plate as a guideline to getting that nice and parallel. Now that I've got that in place, I'm going to grab my little extra bit here to put our cup onto. We're going to pop our cup on here. Make sure that we are still nice and level, because you never know, things do move. Alright, so we are still nice and level on our machine here, and now we're actually going to attach the wire. Once you attach the wire on there, you can't make any more adjustments to it, so make sure you've got everything as it needs to be before connecting it onto the machine. Alright, so to do that, I've got our cord, and I'm going to plug that into this end of the machine here, and then we're going to make sure that's nice and tight in there. And then with this end, we're going to thread it out the back of the machine. And then on the back of the machine, where you've got your USB and your powers, you're going to plug it into the extra spot. You're going to tighten that on so there is no risk of it coming off. And then our rotary is all in and ready to go. Alright, so we've got the machine on. You can hear the noise going, but there are a couple of things I do want to point out while the machine is on, because you can only see it at this point in time. The first is, if you've got young children or animals coming in here, be aware that if they are small enough, they are going to be able to look up and see the laser working. So be very, very aware of that. And if you are an adult, do not be tempted to look under here while it is working. It will hurt your eyes if you look at that laser. Now, with this, we're using the risers because that is standard with the kit. In future videos, I'll be looking at the honeycomb riser kit that was sent to me, and that eliminates this problem of having this exposed area, but that will be in a future video. Now, the other thing I want to share with you is what's going on inside here. If we block that light, you can see we've got a red dot on the top of the cup. Now, that red dot is where the etching pattern I'm going to be doing is going to finish. So I've actually put myself a little bit of tape on there because it's going to help me in a moment as we look at it on the computer. Alright, now I have actually left the machine on while we do this, because if you don't get your proper measurements. So what you can see here, we can see that the machine has taken a photo of our bed and we've got our cup on there. What we're going to do is come up here to where it says laser flat, and we're going to change that to laser cylindrical, and you can see it completely changes the orientation of our image here. Now, before I bring my image in and start messing around with it, I'm going to set some of my other parameters because it does move the image a little bit more. So under user defined, I'm going to actually select stainless steel tag. We're working on a stainless steel tumbler, so I feel that this is going to be the best option. And what I'm going to do is say auto measure, just so that we get everything in the correct place. Now, on occasion, this may not auto measure for you depending upon the height, and that's when you need this handy dandy little tool. This is just a very simple ruler, and the file is available through xTool to download and cut out yourself. The file actually does have it in millimeters and inches. Because I won't be using inches on this, I did actually take the inches off and moved my millimeters across, so I had millimeters on both sides. if this came up with an error message saying that it couldn't auto measure, you actually use this tool to do the measuring with, and there's complete guides on xTool on how to use this. So make sure you have printed one of these up as well. Now what I can see is the line is just a little bit off from where my tape is. So I'm just going to roll it just a little bit. We've got a new photo, and we now have the cup where I want it. It's not so vital on this one because this is just a cap where I can put it on, but if you've got a screw cap and you want to make sure that your screw caps actually line up with your images, it's really important to do this step. And if you want to make sure that you've got your image where you want it, like say in the center, just use more masking tape to help you with this next sort of process. What we're going to do is import the image that I created earlier over in Canva, and I will do future videos showing how I actually do this as well. It's a little bit slow here today. Let's go open. I've saved this one as a PNG file just simply because of the image I was using. And at the moment it's a little bit too wide for what I want. I'm actually going to change this down. It says it's at 200. I'm going to change it to 9 centimeters or 90 millimeters. So we've resized it, and the way that you see this on your screen is the way that it's going to print. So at the moment my phrase is upside down, so I'm just going to use my little rotating handle here and turn my image the right way around like so, and I'm going to line it up with the yellow line that runs down the center of my cup here. That is where the image is actually going to finish. If your image is sitting over that line, it will tell you that part of your image is not within the area it can work. So I'm just going to pull that over. I'm going to zoom in to make sure we've got it just right so nothing's going to get cut off, and it's looking pretty good to me. I've actually got a saying here: in a world full of roses, be a sunflower, because sunflowers are my favorite flowers. Roses are the ones I really don't like because they're so common. So I just thought that was going to be perfect for this tumbler. So now that I have got all of that on here, I'm going to leave it at the power of 70, which is their suggestion for stainless steel tags. Keep it at the speed and everything else that we've got in here, and I'm going to go process. Alright, for some reason mine had actually disconnected. I don't know why. One last thing I forgot to mention is that you've got the mode in here. We're using the rollers, so make sure that roller is selected. We're going to go process. It's going to come through onto the next screen. It is upside down because our cup's upside down. We're going to say start. We're going to hit the button on our machine. And then we're going to keep our fingers crossed and hope that this does as it should. Alright, so it has just beeped to let me know it is done. Let's take a look, shall we? Let's grab it out. It is looking pretty good. It does need to have just a little bit of a cleanup, so I'll do that and then I'll give you a better look. Alright, so according to the clock on the software of the program there, it did take 61 minutes to etch this up. Now in that time it has got very dark outside, so we've got fairly poor lighting now, and a great big flash of lightning has just gone off out there, and we've got a storm rolling in. Now if you didn't hear that, there was a bit of thunder there, so I do want to get the computer and everything turned off because sometimes we do get a bit of lightning hit around here and I don't want to blow my machine up because I really do like it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call it a night for tonight. Tomorrow I'll go and get the magic erasers to clean this up, and then we'll have a go at etching something else. Okay, so it is the next day. I have just been out, bought myself a magic eraser, and I used some of that with a little bit of rubbing alcohol on here just to give it a little bit more of a polish, and you can see that it's got a lot more shine to it. I do still have some of those darker spots, and that could just be either because of the type of stainless steel. It is a bit darker than some of the ones that you see, and it could also be the strength that I used to do mine. Maybe doing it with a higher strength to take off more of that sort of surface layer would give it a much shinier effect. But I absolutely love how this one has turned out. I love the sort of dark and the light effect that it has, and how that light shines through as it turns in the sun. Super impressed with how that has etched onto the stainless steel cup. But what we're now going to do is have a look at doing some etching on glass, because this is one of the things I really want to do in my business. Now, etching on glass is a little bit more different to etching on stainless steel. The way that a laser works is as it penetrates onto a surface area, it can rebound back off. Now, the problem with glass is that it is clear and see-through, and this is the same with clear acrylic as well. So there are a few prep things that you need to do to be able to etch onto glass like this. Alright, so what we need to do is trick the machine into thinking that this is actually a solid colour and not clear and see-through, so it knows where to bounce that laser back off. Now, there's several ways you can do that. I'm actually going to be using this. This was something that was included in the premium materials kit, and it has been designed for etching on glassware. So what we're going to do is cut a square of this out, stick it onto our glass. I'm going to make sure it's big enough to cover the area that I want to etch. But there are other ways of doing it if you don't have this sort of material. You see a lot of people who get chalk paint, and they paint chalk paint onto the glass, let it dry naturally, which I believe is the key to it, is letting it dry naturally, and then once it's etched, that chalk paint will wash off. So that is another way of doing it. But seeing as I've got this and I don't have chalk paint, this is what I'm going to use. So I'm going to cut myself a piece off, pop it on here, and then the other thing we then need to do is set up our rotary attachment to do this, because it is actually larger than our last piece, so I suspect we'll have to move the rollers. So I've just adjusted the arms on the rotary. Now, when it does come time to moving these arms along, it's really important. Inside here, it's going to be really hard for you to see, but there is like a little conveyor belt that looks like this. A little fan belt sort of thing, and you need your rollers to be sitting in between these, because this is what helps the rollers to move. So if this isn't actually going in properly, it generally means that you've not got it between the actual belts in here. So I do find it easier to kind of put it into the middle and then push it across before screwing this end in. But now that we've got that all set up, I'm going to go and get this into the laser cutter, and I already have my file that I'm going to bring over and etch onto the front of this. So I was finding with this, the wheels are actually already too high, so it was just not helping me to center this. So what I've done is I've just made myself a really dodgy looking little level piece here. I have got a piece of foam and another little piece of wood, which is just tilted up just enough to get that sort of centering on here. It really is important to try and get this as level as you possibly can for a couple of reasons. As I said before, so you get the same sort of laser strength the whole way across your glass to get a nice even etch. And the other reason is that occasionally if your jars are a really odd shape, you'll end up with it narrow and then widening as it comes down. So it's really important to get this as level as you possibly can. So now that we've got that level, we're going to go and get our design into the program, and we're going to get this etched onto the glass. Okay, so I have had a bit of a change because I was getting super hot. It's actually a bit warmer today than I thought it was going to be, so I've taken my under top off. But I'm super happy with how this has come up. This is the first time I've etched on glass. I know all the kind of theories about doing it. I know that when you're etching on glass, you're actually shattering glass, so you have to be really careful on that power. So I did hold back just a little bit, bringing it down to that 60%, and it really does come down to trial and error when the materials are not listed in the machine, but hopefully we've got the settings right on this one. I can see there's one thing I need to alter about this pattern before I actually start doing them on things that are actually ready to sell. You may or may not be able to see on the camera, I don't know. Where the N joins onto the D and where the L joins onto the E, there is a tiny little mark in there, and what it is when I did these letterings, I should have actually brought it over into Adobe Illustrator and welded my letters together so that they're actually nice smooth lines. As it is at the moment, you can actually see that they are individual letters, but it's really easy to fix that sort of stuff if you do have your drawing programs. But other than that, it's looking pretty good. So let's see about getting this tape off of here and the marking paper. Hopefully it's nice and easy to actually come off. Ooh, it's got on there really well. I may have to actually go and wash this off. So I'm going to go and do that, and then I'll show you the end result. So here it is. All I did is I ran some water into the kitchen sink, and then I just laid the jar down so it was sitting in the water, left it for about 5 minutes, and then I just got my scrubbing brush and scrubbed off. Most of it peeled off, but then I used the scrubbing brush to get all the little pieces out. I'm super happy with how it has come up. I know it's going to be really hard to see it on camera because it's always hard to show a reflective surface, but it has come up really well, and I think once we get some wax in there, it's just going to be absolutely stunning. You can see that this word ever has come up a lot darker, which is really quite interesting. It must just have been doing it as a score rather than an etch. Probably next time I would use less power, just so it's not quite as dark, or maybe increase the power on my actual etching to get that little bit darker. But I also do really love the sort of contrast in colors. It's like no one has ever said this sort of thing. So really happy with how it has come up. There are a few little shatter lines, which is a result of actually etching on glass when you get up really close and personal with it, but other than that, it has come up really good. Very impressed with, I think the white's the better sort of background color for this one. So super happy. And this is the sort of thing that I really wanted a laser machine for, because I would love to be able to start offering jars which do have either nice little sayings like this, or even if someone wants like a christening candle or a memorial candle or something like that, I now have that opportunity to be able to personalize these candle jars. I do need to practice just a little bit to make sure that I do have, first of all, the absolute correct settings to make sure we don't end up, if people don't want, you know, the light and dark and that sort of thing, and also to make sure that these are a little bit straighter. It's just a wee bit off, but it's not bad. It's because you kind of get that fisheye picture from out of the machine. It's only got the one camera. I feel if there was another camera in there, you wouldn't get that fisheye, and you'd probably get them a lot straighter, but I'm sure with practice I'll get it right. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to follow the instructions in my book. Need to find the book first. And I'm going to set up the chuck attachment onto the rotary, and then I'm going to have a go at engraving this tumbler. even though it looks super scary to actually put this attachment, you know, take everything apart, put it together again, it is super, super easy to do. There's awesome picture instructions the whole way through showing you how to do it. So it's really, really easy to do. And probably once you've got this bit on here, you can pretty much use, I could have used my jars on here as well to do it. So some people may find they'll never take this back off. It works like a chuck on a drill, so you don't ever lose your little key. You can do it by hand as well, but it is much easier to have your little chuck key. As you turn your key, you can see that these bits in here move in and out, so we'll be able to grab onto different sized projects. And you can either do it so that you put your project inside, like if we get our jar here, you can either have it so, seeing as it's at this point, you can actually have it so that the claws sit inside and you spread it out and hold it. That would be really good if you're trying to do a design right up to the very edge. Or if you actually widen these out far enough, and there's a couple of different screw holes and stuff, so you do have plenty of flexibility, you can get it. I think that jar's just going to be too big, so for ease and quickness we'll go there. You can then sit your items inside these little clamps like so, and then tighten it back up and it will hold your cup in place. Now, one tip I will give to you, make sure that you do not lose these screws. So I actually just put them straight back into the holes where they're meant to go, rather than having them as little screws sitting around. You do get a couple of spares. Oops. You do get a couple of spares to go in them, but this is one really good way of making sure that you actually don't lose the parts, put them back into where they came from. But there is our little chuck. Now, the really good thing with this chuck, we're going to use it like this, but you can actually turn this bit of mechanism around that way so that this part sticks out here. So if you've got something like a coffee cup with a handle, normally it would turn a knock on this, but if you have it on this side and have this raised up a little bit, you can etch on things like coffee cups and not worry about that handle knocking on things. So this chuck part of the rotary kit is super, super impressive. You do get some slightly bigger holders as well. And then in the other box that we got, there are also these pieces here, and these are really handy. We've got a couple of screws, spare screws. Let's put them in there so we don't lose them. These are really handy. You screw these into your chuck, and then you can do things like if you've got a ring, these will actually sit. I'm making a whole lot of noise here, I'm sorry guys. These will actually sit inside ring bands, so you can actually etch over ring bands. You can do things like if you've got, say, a really narrow, skinny jar, like a diffuser jar, you can actually put these inside your bottle instead and hold it that way. So there are so many attachments that go with this. So with all those attachments, you get so many endless possibilities of what you can actually do with this. If you do find that you are having troubles with this being nice and level, because you can see we're not going to be level on this cup, but I am doing it on here because I feel it's going to rotate better and give me a better result. You can, again, like I did before, just prop the end of this up. There is also in this kit, if you've got something that's quite long and you're afraid that it's not very stable, you have got this bit which slides onto the end, and when you lock it in place, it will hold this nice and stable as well. So many attachments. We are going to etch on this cup, but I do need to pop out for a moment. So we will be back very soon and we will get a nice etched pattern going on this cup. Okay, so I've got everything in the machine all lined up. I've put everything in here. We're doing the stainless steel mug, so I have just selected the stainless steel tag, and I'm going to use the presets that are in there for the power and the speed, and hopefully it will get through that paintwork that's on this cup as well. I did the auto measure and it's come up with that, and I changed it over to chuck, and you get these two other options, perimeter and diameter. All you actually need to do is measure the perimeter, which is the outside. Now, because our tumbler is that sort of odd shape, I've kind of measured in between where it's the smallest and the widest, and I've used the little tape measure that they provided. So I've placed that around, pulled it up, and then taken the reading that comes against this opening here, popped that in, and then it worked out the diameter for me. As I said, I'm going to leave the power and the speed as it is. Actually, no, we will leave it as it is. This is a test run to see if it's going to work. Hopefully we'll get through that paint. It got through the paint nicely on here, so there's no reason why it shouldn't actually work. So what we're now going to do is click on process. I did also pick up that yellow line and moved it across a little bit. It kept telling me that my project wasn't within the area, and although the words were within the etched area, because of the green box around my words was sitting on the other side of that yellow mark, it wasn't going to process it. So just grab hold of that the yellow line with your mouse and just pull it across, and it will move it for you. So now that I've got that all in place, I'm going to click start. It'll tell me to push the button on the machine, and we're going to let it go and do its thing. So I have finished giving that a clean. I have heard that degreaser is the best thing to try and get all the sort of burn mark out of here, but I don't have any. I have ordered some, but for now I'm just using a bit of 90% rubbing alcohol and a bit of elbow grease with my very much used magic eraser here. And you can see when I bring it up close here, there is a little bit of a shine on this for gin, because this is a much thicker area that it's engraved. It's still got a lot of that darkness in there, but I love the sort of difference in colors. I am super impressed again with the sort of, don't want it to focus on me, there it goes. Super impressed with that sort of level of detail, especially in that little glass. Like, just everything is there. The etching of this, it's just absolutely superb how detailed it gets in there. Really do love it. And the other thing you have to remember with these cups is that this does have a layer of paint over it that it's got to get through, and when we're using these settings in here as they are, it is just basically based on doing straight on stainless steel, not through this paint. So I think that does an absolutely fabulous job. So there it is. We've got three things which I have etched using the M1 Rotary, or the RA2 Pro kit that I've got here. So we've got our tumbler, just a straight up and down tumbler that we did on our rollers. We have the coffee cup, which I've just done using that chuck attachment, and we also have the candle. You can see it is now filled up with wax. I had to go into the shop today, so I went and filled it up while I was there, so I could see just how it actually looked once it was filled. And I actually do prefer how the score lines look as opposed to the etched lines, so that's something for me to consider. I will have a bit of a play with this because, as I said, this is something I want to do for my business. We'll see if I can get that etching just a little bit darker and with less of the sort of shatter marks on it as well. So I'll see how I go with that. But there is an idea of some things that you can do with this machine. You can do your etched tumblers to sell, to have part of your set, or like me, you can start doing some customized candles as well. So I hope you have enjoyed coming along with me today as I use the rotary attachment tool on the xTool M1 laser and blade cutting machine. If you are interested in the machine and the rotary attachment or anything else, I have left some links down in the description box. I would love it if you are interested. If you click on those links, it won't cost you any more, but it does give the company an idea of how much business I can actually generate over towards them as well, which is always very handy to know if these videos actually do work or not. For now, I'm going to go and actually make myself a cup of coffee. It is late enough for a gin, but I actually feel like a cup of coffee, so I'm going to go and do that. I hope you enjoyed watching. If you did, why not leave a thumbs up, any comments down below, and until the next video, I hope you have a good one, and I will see you then. Bye.